Hey, Adam LittleJ here with the second video of the Casual to Committed launch. I'm so excited for this series. It's been an incredible launch so far. And the last video, I outlined the 5 components of Casual to Committed. I talk about the power system. The P is, of course, protecting your heart from the wrong guys. The O is for being open with your heart to the right guys. The W is, of course, knowing your self-worth. The E is for making a guy earn it. And of course, the R is being rational about your love life. So if you haven't seen that video, you want to make sure you go to casualtocommitted.com to check that out. Now, these series of videos, they're part of the launch of my new program I'm releasing called Casual to Committed Blueprint, where I basically help women like yourself reclaim the power in their love life to find the commitment that they really want. And I gotta say, this launch has been amazing. So far, thousands of women in nearly every country in the entire world have watched these videos and implemented that power system in some way, shape, or form. It makes me so happy as a coach to be able to see the results we've been getting so far. Now, in this second video, I'll be talking about the 5 types of guys that you'll be dating before you get married, and you want to make sure that you avoid 3 of them. Now, I made this video in this spot because I wanted to bring you to a very, very special place in my heart, of course, because this is the type of neighborhood in my hometown of Boston where I would actually coach men on how to be able to overcome some of their fears, be able to come up and talk to you. Yes, you. And let me tell you, I never thought in my entire life that I'd be making videos like this for women, because when I first started, I actually used to go out with guys and help them with their social skills. I used to teach them how to be able to go out and approach women like you and how to do it so they're not creepy, but they're actually confident, working on their body language and what it is that they can say. And no, I wasn't some type of pickup artist or anything like that. I was teaching guys social skills so that they could be able to go out and find the relationship that they really wanted. But I remember this one time I worked with this guy. His name was John, and he was about 40, maybe 45. He was a little bit older than myself. He was very wealthy, he was successful, and I remember on our very first day of coaching, he looks me in the eyes and just looks at me right like this, and he says, "Adam, how many women do you think I'll have sex with once I'm done with your coaching?" And I remember that hit me like a ton of bricks, right? And you might be thinking, watching this video, knowing me and sexy confidence, that I went all Will Smith on him, if you've seen the movie Hitch, and I just like threw him on the table and said, you know, never talk to me ever again. Well, the reality is I didn't do that, because that's not what I'm about, right? I didn't do that because I understand how the male mind works. I didn't have that visceral reaction because I know how guys work. We first think down here, of course, and then we think with our hearts. Now, I ended up continuing working with him, but in a very different way than he even thought that I would work with him. I worked him through this process of authenticity in his dating life that actually led him to a committed relationship that he really wanted. He didn't know he wanted it, but he actually did end up wanting it. And the real reason that he wanted to just like bang women is because he was actually terrified of what intimacy really meant in his own life. So I tell you that story because many times when you might meet a certain type of guy, you know, you might make that kind of snap judgment, that judgment where you think he might be this type of dude or this type of guy, and I'm gonna stay away from him and I'm gonna go for this guy. Where in reality, you might be reading the signals a little bit wrong. And a lot of women assume that they know everything about men, but it's just not the case. I mean, I've been working with both men and women for so many years, and that's not necessarily the case. We see the world through very different lenses. So I'll tell you what, I've coached every single type of guy out there when it comes to dating and relationships. And in this video right now, I've outlined the 5 different types of guys that you're gonna be meeting throughout your entire dating process, throughout being in relationships, and 3 of them you really wanna avoid, and 2 of them are the types of guys you wanna open your heart to. So let's jump over to the studio and I'll outline that for you right now. All right, so we're back in the studio here, and now we're gonna be talking about the 5 types of guys that you're probably gonna date or meet before you get married. And 3 of them you're gonna really want to avoid, and 2 of them you wanna keep open, all right? First one is what I call the freedom fighter, all right? The freedom fighter is the type of guy who is just completely single and completely uninterested in a relationship. Now, I've talked about this before, but you know, back when I was around 23, 24, I was a total freedom fighter, okay? I was young, I was recently out of a pretty long-term relationship, a 1.5-year relationship, and at that age, it's a pretty long time. And I was willing to fight for my single status as hard as possible. I was like a soldier going to war. There's just no freaking way that I was going to be in a relationship. And you know, so that was me back when I was 24. Of course, that changed and I turned into a different category that I'll be talking about in this video a little bit later. But at this point, it just wasn't happening. So the only types of women that, of course, should have been getting involved with me would be women who just really wanted a casual situation. If a woman was looking for something a little more committed or a little more serious, I would have been the type of guy, move on, not the right type of dude for you. 100% positive about that one for sure. Other types of guys are guys who have just literally never been in a long-term relationship. A lot of them are freedom fighters because they're scared and they don't know what a relationship is even like. So the fear of something new and different and change is so much greater than the potential upside of it for them. So they're that freedom fighter. They're going to stay completely out of it. And these are the types of guys who maybe, they'll on a weeknight, they'll take you out for drinks and then they'll save their weekends for going out and picking up new girls, right? The types of guys who you might even call players. These are the types of guys that you want to reject. And the problem with these types of guys is a lot of women think that time will change things. And of course, sometimes that does happen. In pretty rare cases, the guy will eventually come around. But you know what? How many times have you gotten involved with a guy who even says that there's no way that they're going to be in a relationship, and then it's true, they just don't change, right? They just don't want to be in a relationship. If the guy shows absolutely no interest in a relationship whatsoever, you need to protect your heart. Remember in video 1 we talked about protection, it's key. So protect your heart, move away from the freedom fighters. These guys, a lot of them are great guys, and I have a lot of friends who are freedom fighters. There's nothing wrong necessarily with them. If they have to lie to be freedom fighters, I have a problem with that. But if they just want to be freedom fighters, they don't want to be in a relationship, that's their choice. And that's just someone you got to just move on from. The second type of guy you will probably meet or date before you get married is what I call the mind f***er, all right? He'll not only have sex with your body, but he will have complete intercourse with your brain. And that shit doesn't feel very good, all right? You know that shit doesn't feel good. He's gonna give you just enough of what you need to keep you around, but he's not gonna give you anything more. I mean, this is the type of guy who's gonna come on super strong, like tell you how he feels about you, might even tell you he loves you very quickly, shares feelings for you, and almost a little bit too quickly, right? You'll feel almost, wow, this is coming out of nowhere. He'll tell you that, for example, he might tell you that you are the most interesting person that he's ever met. Yet at this point, you've only known him for a week, and you haven't even really said anything that interesting yet. Like, that's the type of guy that I'm talking about here. They still want the girl, but they don't want the relationship, right? They'll come on really strong, and then they'll start to disappear, and then they'll come on really strong again, but then they'll disappear. These are guys who just completely lead with their hearts, but also at the same time don't really want a relationship. And then what might happen is you might push away, and then he'll come back really strong, right? You might be like, listen, this isn't for me. You give him some distance, and then he's going to come back towards you. And the reality is with this type of person, and of course, women can definitely be a mind fucker as well. But of course, we're talking about men for you. The thing is it's not that he doesn't want you. It's just that he also doesn't want to be tied down either. He wants the best of both worlds. He wants his cake and he wants to eat it too, as the saying goes. And a lot of times that comes with a guy who's just really confused about the things that he wants in his life. And here's the thing. Here's what you need to do with mindfucker. You need to avoid him. Look, you don't need to just outright reject this one, but openness is absolutely critical with this type of person. He might not necessarily know what he's doing to you. He might not realize that. A lot of times guys will assume that, maybe you just want something casual. And this is where in the power system, the openness is really, really important. I remember I had one client and she was casually seeing a guy. They were just kind of like, hooking up, I'd say once, twice a week. I don't really remember exactly how often they were hooking up, but they were hooking up, relatively regularly. And he'd come on super strong, introduce her to all of his friends. She even met his dad, like all this stuff. But then her friend came across this dude's Tinder profile, and she thought to herself, well, maybe it's an old version, maybe it's like still out there in the cloud somewhere, but it's not really his profile. So she just decided to approach the situation with openness and authenticity and ask him, of course, about it in a pretty open-minded way. And you know what he said back? He goes, I was looking for another woman so that we could all have a threesome. All right. So that was his response. And he was just like, look, that's what I wanted. And you know what? If you're probably like 95% of women at this point, you're probably turned off anyways. You probably wouldn't be interested in that dude. So by approaching him with openness and authenticity, then at least at that point, you can understand where his behaviors are coming from. And who knows? On the other hand, you might get a different response, and it might cause you to take a different course of action. But openness, honesty, and authenticity is really, really key to all of this stuff. So let me tell you, these are the types of guys you want to avoid, and obviously lead with authenticity. But the key to successful relationships in life is to get laid down here, not up here. All right. So be very cautious of the mindfucker. The third person is what I call the prisoner. Now, this is the type of guy who is not seeing anyone else. So you guys are in an exclusive relationship, but he is clearly looking for an out, right? Like, he does really sketchy stuff. He'll introduce you to his friends, his family, but he'll always be kind of on the lookout for another woman, another relationship. You might catch him texting or flirting with other women, or spend his weekends with like his single buddies, getting wasted every night instead of spending with you. He might even still have an online dating profile. Maybe you found that profile. The course of action with this is to assert your boundaries. If he's clearly looking for an out, give him the ultimate out. Either his behavior changes, or of course, if his behavior doesn't change, then you actually need to break it off, right? And I know this stuff is super hard, and these types of ultimatums are difficult, but really, it's not an ultimatum, it's just you being open about the standards that you've set for yourself in life and relationships. And that stuff can be painful, it can be really difficult. But now that you've watched video 1 and you now know your worth, you're that $1 million lady that we talked about, you need to have the same types of expectations for how people treat you. And that's why we talk so much about your self-worth. The last thing that you really want in your life is to be dating a guy who feels like he's a prisoner. You're not a jail. You're not a jail. You're more like what I would consider to be, you're an amusement park, right? When he's in your amusement park, it'll be fun, it'll be exciting, it'll be interesting. But if he breaks any policies, then he's out, right? And if you've ever been to an amusement park, you know that once you leave the park, there ain't no re-entry. You're out, all right? So think of it that way. So those are the 3 guys that you're really gonna want to avoid. Now let's talk about the positive stuff. Let's talk about the 2 guys that you want to certainly be much more open to. And these are the types of guys that you will also probably meet and date. Now let's talk about the 4th guy that you're probably gonna date before you get married. This guy's name is Mr. Maybe. This guy is a large majority of guys out there, and there's an abundance of men out there who fall into this category, and they are basically single and open to a relationship, right? He's Mr. Maybe, he's maybe. If the right girl comes around, then that'd be fantastic. I'd be totally open to that. If she doesn't come around, then I'm totally fine with being single, right? He's just kind of unsure of what exactly he wants. And a lot of times these types of dudes need to be educated on how to actually have a relationship. He needs to be educated from you, he needs to be educated from people like myself. If I coach men, but I don't, he needs a little bit of education, a little bit of guidance. This is the type of guy who, he's definitely on Tinder or like Bumble or some of the top free dating apps, but he also might have a Match.com profile. A lot of his friends are probably in relationships. He'll still go out and hook up with a lot of women, but he doesn't feel great about it. He's not like super excited about it. He's not like a freedom fighter who's like loving every single second of it. And quite frankly, he comes from a good family, and he wants something a little bit more than just that casual thing for the rest of his life. So the course of action for you, if you meet this type of guy, Mr. Maybe, you're gonna meet a lot of guys that probably fall into this, is to accept his advances, but tread very lightly. No matter what, if you start dating a guy who's kind of unsure, he's kind of on the fence, and it's been a kind of a slow progression, whatever you do, don't stop seeing other guys, all right? You don't have to sleep with anyone else. You don't have to sleep with anyone. Actually, at this point, it is part of the casual committed blueprint. You don't want to be sleeping with anyone at this point if you want a great relationship. But you want to be going out with other men and accepting advances from other men. You are not in a committed relationship with anyone until it's explicitly clear that you're in a committed relationship. So in this particular case, as you know, a lot of guys fall into this category, and it is, quite frankly, a little bit rare to find guys who are actively looking for a relationship. So the Mr. Maybes of the world are the guys that you'll probably be most attracted to. These are guys that you're interested in because he probably looks pretty good on paper. He's also pretty interested in a relationship, but he's not coming on too strong. He's not coming on to a point where you're like turned off almost by his advances. Mr. Maybe is the type of guy who will need a little bit more time to transition out of a single life into a relationship. But he's definitely a guy that you want to keep open to and give him that time. Of course, don't invest everything emotionally into him yet, but these are the types of guys you will be certainly meeting. And finally, the last dude is the last guy that you'll probably meet before you get married is the guy I call the pilgrim. This is the guy who's looking to settle down, is looking for a relationship. Here's the problem with a pilgrim, and I think all of you might say to your girlfriends, oh God, I just want to find a guy who wants to settle down. But the reality is when you meet him, you're probably not that attracted to him, right? He's probably actually not that massively attracted to you because he's probably as unattractive as a guy who's dressed like a pilgrim. This dude is so sick of the dating scene that he'll probably come on even a little bit too strong at first. You know, maybe even a little bit needy at first, or very, very, very needy at first. This is the type of guy, he's not gonna play a lot of games. He probably doesn't even really know that much about flirtation. He probably is, just really got his mind focused on finding a girlfriend, finding a relationship. And yeah, again, he might not be great at flirting with you, and you might find that you're not going to be like massively attracted to this guy at first. Certainly not as attracted to this guy as Mr. Maybe or the freedom fighter. When you talk to your girlfriends, you might say, this is what you want. You want the settler. But when you're actually faced with him, you actually might be pretty unattracted to him. He's not going to be that exciting at first. And what you see is what you get. Now, here's the thing with a pilgrim. I actually went through a pilgrim phase. When I started Sexy Confidence, I went from coaching men to coaching women. And I went through about a 4-year phase of being a total freedom fighter. And then I decided, you know what, I'm starting to coach women. I really need to settle down in my life. And I don't need to be going out all the time. I really would love a girlfriend. And actually at that time, it didn't go so well. It was amazing. It was an incredibly interesting experience for me because I was also, of course, teaching a lot about attraction. After 4 years of going out, meeting women successfully as a freedom fighter, and passing up a lot of opportunities to be in a great relationship with a lot of women who I would have been interested in, I found myself not attracting any of the women that I wanted. And that was probably because I was being a little bit too forward, a little bit too soon. I wanted a girlfriend. So of course, that type of behavior with that mindset is not necessarily going to be as attractive to you. So I need you women to be aware of that a lot of the good guys might not necessarily right off the bat be like the most, holy crap, I'm super attracted to this guy. But you got to give him time. You got to give him energy. You got to give him that time so you guys can actually get to know each other. And that attraction can grow over time, okay? The guys to you that are probably, the times when I found like I was best at attracting women were the times when I was a total freedom fighter. And that's not good. That's not good. It's our biology playing crazy things with our game. So you need to be, with our head, you need to be aware of those things and act accordingly. So for this, the course of action is to give him a chance. You don't have to fall in love with the pilgrim on the first date in order to ultimately fall in love with him on the 5th date or in the long term. Pilgrims are very secure and they give you that wholesome love that you really want and need. So keep that in mind when you're getting out there. So here's the moral of the story with all this stuff. Remember, reject the freedom fighter, avoid the mind fucker, create an open dialogue with the prisoner, tread very slowly and lightly with Mr. Maybe, but stay open to it. And finally, give the pilgrim a chance, all right? Remember, no guy is going to be perfect that you meet. And guys may fall, will move in and out of many of these categories from time to time at different periods in their life. And it's really important for you to try to identify and put these guys in different categories so you can really act accordingly and be smart about your dating life and how it is that you're treating these different men. And that's why my Casual to Committed course, and that's really what it's all about. So now we'll jump back to, of course, the streets. Now in the Casual to Committed blueprint, I detail exactly how to handle these types of guys. What to say, where you meet them, how to avoid them, and how to open your heart to the right types of guys. So if you're not watching this video right now at casualtocommitted.com, you're gonna wanna go over there. You're crazy because I give you a ton of downloads that you can use. You can download right there below if you are watching this at casualtocommitted.com. If you're not, if you're on YouTube, make sure you go over there because you can see some downloads that you'll have right there. You can print them out, And of course, keep these everywhere and be able to look at these on an ongoing basis to really remind yourself and keep you focused on what it is that you really want in your life. And then of course, if you are at casualcommitted.com, you'll now see there's an early birds list right there below. Next, I'd like you to comment below with which type of guy you're currently dating, or maybe the last date guy that you have dated. And I want to hear about it right there below. I want to maybe hear a story, how it worked for you, how it maybe didn't work out so well for you. And finally, in the next video, this is a really fun video, we're going to be actually going to a place in my home where I don't bring many women. Of course, I have a girlfriend, but we're going to be talking about, in that place in my home, we're going to be talking about the 3 biggest mistakes that you make trying to get a guy to commit. So you're not going to want to miss that. I'm super excited for this entire launch. It's been incredibly successful so far. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Bye-bye.